Hi there, welcome to the last movie number 4, where we will um, discuss the last few things about this project. Um, I now realize this is still called P5 paradigms. I might change that to P5 sketch and test. Well, let's see. Um, we discussed how to quickly set up an experiment. In the second movie, a little bit about p5.js, and in the third movie, about where to put your images. And in the last movie, we will shortly discuss some example experiments and a few things that you may be wondering about. So the first thing I wanted to tell you is how actually does that data you get from JavaScript end up in your um Amazon Mechanical Turk data file. So let's check that out shortly. Um, we made this function, the function called finished, that you should run when your experiment is finished. And if it's not on the p5 editor, so if you're running it on mturk, it makes this um, uh, variable HTML element thing. It's called exp_out, and you assign it a value, and the value is the value that comes out of this function, which is stable to CSV, which basically converts your table data that you stored in a p5 table into a CSV kind of string. Um, so this is important. So it's called exp_out, and it ends up, if you go, so this part is basically the HTML part. So here are the instructions. Here is the p5 sketch located on the screen, and then under it there's actually, well, nothing to be seen, but there is input going on, and that is um, it waits until it gets the exp out, so the data from the p5 sketch, um, and it says required, meaning uh, it you won't be able to submit the hit until the data is uh, passed to the exp out um, uh, variable thing. So this is basically um, how it ends up at the mturk data. We can, well, let's just see what happens if we post this hit. Should we just post it? Yeah, finish, publish. Next. Uh, Martin example test. Yeah, description here. Publish. That. Oops, it's already published. On the worker sandbox. Martin example test. Let's go to the worker sandbox. Which is anyway nice to check the worker sandbox, because that's the place where everyone is testing their data. Is there something interesting going on? Let's see. Label images. No, not much. Anyway, let's go to myself. Wijntjes. Yes, your title here. That's me. Accept and work. So here's then the the nonsense experiment. I have to click 10 times. I think that was what was the experiment about. Thanks. You can press submit now. And I press submit, and then I'm done. So I cannot do it again. I think no more. It's available. So let's check the results now. Yes, it's there. So this is the data, and then here is the data output, as you can see. Let's download it. So it's not super nice. It is super nice, but it's not super practical. Anyway, this is a CSV file, and then here is your CSV string. So it's sort of a meta CSV. I normally don't have problems in doing analysis on these kinds of data. Um, if you are not so good in scripting, then you might want to do it by hand. If you know a little bit of scripting, then this is easy peasy. So, what was the reason that I wanted to share this with you? Mm, no, yeah, that's how the data looks. Let's go back to the repository. So now we explained this part, which should always be in your p5.js sketch. So we posted, and we also wrote about a number of sort of standard experiments. Well, change blindness is for sure a standard experiment. Bubble view should be a standard experiment, I think, because it's very nice. And let's check out shortly bubble view. What I also did, let me first tell you what is sort of practical about putting everything on S3. So if you put all your stuff here, if you press on the HTML file, you actually see the experiment. But it's not on mturk, it's now there, but it loads the crowd elements of mturk. So you can also run it here. But of course you cannot really submit something because you're not on mturk. And so here for the change blindness, bubble view, and the gauge figure task, I put some links. So for example, with the change blindness, you can press the HTML file, and then here you can do the change blindness task. So this is a sort of, we used some data from a paper called Change Blindness Images. The references will be in the preprint. If you go to bubble view, that's what I wanted to show you. Yeah. Something is not right. It's called change blindness and then in bubble view. Yeah, I made a mistake. Well, I will fix that later, but I can easily access it from here. Bubble view, bubble view, bubble view, bubble view. This should work. So what we did here, this part, so the bubble view paradigm is you're given a blurred image, and the task can be different. It can be you can have different tasks, but the most common task is let people describe what is in the image, and then you can either confine the time, limit the time, or limit the clicks. We limited the clicks, and by clicking on stuff, you can make it sharp. So that's a very clever, I think, experiment to find out what kind of information people will look for when they have to describe something. And the authors of that paper, they show that this data is very much similar to eye tracking data. But read that stuff if you're interested. What I wanted to tell you is that this part is the P5 sketch. Here is a crowd element from mturk. So we sort of make use also of that. So here I can, it looks like a laptop. So this is my explanation of the image, because that's part of the task. So if I now press, well, I first have to finish the clicks, and now I can press submit, and then actually, so the data is this CSV file here. We outputted all the locations and the image name, and here is the text. So you can use some parts of mturk crowd elements in your experiment, which is, I think, quite practical. Where are we? Yeah, the gauge figure probe is sort of, or you can do it yourself. Yeah, and for the rest, I think in general, if you want to learn more about P5, you should check out um, p5.js tutorials by Dan Schiefman. One of the tutorials is about how to change the loading screen, which is not super important, but it's funny. Um, as you, we didn't integrate full screen options, but it is quite possible to use full screen also in mturk. And of course, many of you would like to use that because in mturk it's always shown in sort of an iframe. So here's a link how to do that. And in general, if you want to maybe use different pages to have your informed consent or those kind of information subsequently shown, I think I remember that from Timothy Brady. He has a very cool mturk tutorial on his website, and I think he explained it there, if I remember well. Or you can integrate it in your p5.js thing. Okay, that's it for now.